Arthur Kaliyev is out for the season. What does the future hold for Kaliyev? Plus, was it a good move for the Rangers to extend Jonathan Quick?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1270 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we got some breaking news this morning, and it is not good for the Rangers, particularly if you're a fan of Arthur Kaliyev, because the news broke a couple of hours ago here that Kaliyev will be out for the rest of the season. Kaliyev last played in a game on March 11th. That was a loss for the Rangers in Winnipeg against the Jets. Interestingly enough, Kaliyev had just gotten back into the lineup. He had been a healthy scratch for 7 consecutive games before that, so obviously very unfortunate for him. He finally gets his way back into the lineup, and the next thing you know, he suffers an upper body injury, and a couple of days later, the Rangers rule him out for the rest of the season, and it sounds like they're ruling him out for the entire postseason too, if they get there, which is a enormous question in and of itself. Obviously, just barely hanging on by a thread at this point, but it sounds like he would not be available in the unlikely event, even if the Rangers were to make a deep playoff run. But, I didn't realize this was this serious of an injury where his season was, in jeopardy. It's possible the Rangers didn't realize that either, but we heard that the injury had been sustained, and he's going to head back to New York and get it looked at and everything, because the Rangers were on the road for one more game. I believe it was just one more game on the road when they sent him home to be evaluated. And you're thinking like, okay, well, they just ruled him out for this one final away game here. They got 4 games in a row at home after that, and maybe it's possible that he'll be available for one of those games. But in fact, he will not be available at all for the rest of the season. And kind of an interesting path that Kaliyev has taken this year. Obviously, the Rangers claimed him off of waivers from the LA Kings on January the 6th. He ended up playing 14 games with the Rangers, in and out of the lineup a little bit, but he ended up with 3 goals, an assist. He was a +2, had 7 hits and 2 blocked shots. And coming over here to the Rangers, the book on Kaliyev was basically that he's got a pretty lethal shot, but that the rest of his game, at least as of yet, has not caught up to his shot. And there was a game where he scored from the right circle, like the top of the right circle, just unleashed an absolute snipe into the top shelf. It's a heck of a goal. And I remember tweeting out when that happened that, man, if the rest of Kaliyev's game can ever catch up to his shot, or at least get close to his shot, the Rangers would have a heck of a player here. And I still believe that to be true. Unfortunately, it does seem like there's other areas of his game that need some work. I think defensive positioning is probably up there. And the one thing that stands out for me more than anything else, and maybe for some of you guys as well, is his skating. He just doesn't seem like a very mobile, agile, or fast skater. So that's something that, hopefully he can work on going forward. Overall, I thought his skating was clearly a weakness, and maybe that was one of the biggest reasons why, he found himself as a healthy scratch for 7 games in a row before, obviously getting back in for that one game and then unfortunately sustaining the injury that, as we found out, will keep him out for the rest of the season. But, there's still at least some theoretical upside when it comes to Arthur Kaliyev. We're talking about a 23-year-old winger here who was selected just 6 years ago in 2019, the 2019 NHL draft, taken in the second round, the second pick of the second round by the LA Kings that year, and obviously still very young, so there's some draft pedigree there. With that being said, though, I know there were some Ranger fans that saw Kaliyev as a healthy scratch for a whole bunch of games in a row, and they didn't like it, and, we got to give this kid a chance, and we got to start looking to the future. The bottom line, the Rangers during that stretch, and even now, they were then, they are now still in a playoff chase, and with that being the case, Peter Laviolette, I think, is going to go with the lineup that he feels gives him the best chance to win games. that should be the approach pretty much all the time. Now, if there's a situation where the Rangers fall out of the playoff chase completely and you want to get Kaliyev some extended looks at the end of the season, that's fine. Obviously, that's a moot point now because of the season-ending injury. But, he was a healthy scratch, Kaliyev, in favor of guys like Brodzinski, Rempe, Offman and Berard were called up from the Hartford Wolfpack, obviously. And to be honest, I wouldn't have been going with Kaliyev over any of those 4 players that I just mentioned there. Nothing against Kaliyev. I just feel like every one of those other players brings a little bit more to the table and back to my main point, gives the Rangers the best chance to win. But as far as like what the future holds for Kaliyev, will he be back with the team next year? My guess is yes. Right now, he's making $825K per season. After this season ends, Kaliyev will be a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. So you're probably looking at a small pay bump on what he's making right now. And I feel like going into next season, you'll see Kaliyev probably competing for a roster spot the same way that a bunch of other guys will be. Something that's also very noteworthy about Kaliyev, though, as it pertains to his standing with the team and what kind of role he'll have next season, he is not waiver exempt. Kaliyev has played in 202 career NHL games. The cutoff for skaters being waiver exempt, and there are some exceptions to this rule, but typically the cutoff is 160 games played. Once you get to that threshold, you can no longer be sent to the minors without having to be passed through waivers first. And that is also true of Arthur Kaliyev. Did a quick look on Puckpedia, saw the list of Ranger players that are waiver exempt, and he was not on that list. So if he does not make the Ranger team coming out of training camp next season, then it does sound like he will have to go through waivers before the Rangers can assign him to the Hartford Wolfpack. And obviously, if that's the case, then all 31 of the other NHL teams will have an opportunity to claim Kaliyev on waivers. Now, on one hand, you would think that, okay, well, that probably won't happen. They probably won't claim him, none of the other 31 teams, because he just was on waivers from the LA Kings and the Rangers claimed him. Although we don't know which teams, a little bit later in the waiver list would have claimed Kaliyev if the Rangers had not. So honestly, it's hard to say for sure. I mean, he didn't set the world on fire with the Rangers, and obviously he's now coming off of an injury, so that might make him less likely to be claimed on waivers, but it's possible that he does get claimed if he doesn't make the Rangers. And we've talked about this before in the past, but all it takes is one of the 31 other teams to claim him. And if they do, then he's gone. And that would be unfortunate to lose him that quickly. Still think it was worth a flyer here, but my expectation is that Kaliyev actually will make the team next year. I know the Rangers will probably say that, we didn't try to factor in waiver exemption status into who makes the team and who doesn't, but teams do that. And sometimes they'll even admit it. So I think that alone gives Kaliyev a decent chance to make the team out of training camp next year. Whether that means somebody like Rempe or somebody like Edstrom who are waiver exempt, whether that means one of them starts in Hartford, that's at least possible too. It would be unfortunate if one of those two had to start in Hartford next year, but you get what I'm saying here. Obviously, that's something that would be taken into account. But look, bottom line, Kaliyev, I don't think that he set the world on fire, and what basically amounted to a tryout with the Rangers here only ended up being 14 games, but he'll have his chance next year. And when you look at the Ranger forward group, there's not really a whole lot that's set in stone going into next season. Who's really locked in to the opening night roster next year on the New York Rangers? As far as forwards are concerned, you've got Panarin, you've got Mika. Mika, I know there's some Ranger fans that are going to want to try to move him in the offseason, and I get it. And if Mika's open to a trade, then I think it at least needs to be explored. But he has the full no-move clause. He's under no obligation to waive it, so I get the feeling he's back. JT Miller's obviously going to be here. Vincent Trocheck is going to be here. Will Cooley is going to be here. I would think probably Lafreniere, probably Carrick. I would imagine the two of them will be back next season for sure. And then you've got a bunch of guys that it really could go either way. They're kind of borderline. They're on the fence as far as making the team or not. I still feel like there's a good chance that Chris Kreider is going to be traded. That can open up another spot. So just very interesting situation when you look at the Ranger forward group and you realize just how wide open this seems to be next season. So Kaliyev's going to be competing with a lot of the guys I already mentioned, whether it's, Brodzinski, Rempe, Edstrom, Berard, Offman, whoever it might be, Parsonen. There's a lot of guys in that group that will be gunning for some of those final few forward spots for the Rangers, and definitely looking forward to seeing how it goes. And obviously unfortunate for Kaliyev and for the Rangers that he will now miss the rest of the season. But in just a second, we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about Tomas Klouček, former New York Ranger who passed away unexpectedly a couple of days ago. Going to do a nice tribute for him, or what I hope will be a nice tribute for him in just a second here. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. There is nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. Gametime's new feature, Gametime Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time scrolling through thousands and thousands of tickets. You got super deals. Gametime Picks highlights the super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. Peace of mind. With seat views before you buy, which is an awesome feature, there are no surprise fees and a lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, for sticking with this podcast. Rangers are going to be in action against the Calgary Flames a little bit later tonight. Another huge game. Stop me if you've heard me say that before, but they're all going to be huge down the stretch here as the Rangers are battling for one of the last couple of playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. But there was some sad news that broke yesterday, Monday, that the day before that on Sunday, former New York Ranger defenseman Tomas Klouček had passed away at the age of just 45. Obviously, just very tragic situation. He passed away in a skiing accident. And, you know, when this news first broke and I first saw it, you know, kind of making its rounds on social media, I actually did think that that name was familiar. I'm not going to act like I remember like everything that Klouček did as a New York Ranger, but that name was familiar. And when I saw it floating around, I thought to myself, like, you know, I think he played on the Rangers. And as it turns out, he did. Spent 2 seasons with the Rangers. He was here in 2000, 2001, as well as 2001, 2002. But a hard-hitting defenseman. We're going to talk a little bit about his career highlights in just a second. Got into a decent amount of fights in what was, you know, a fairly brief NHL career, although he did play, you know, a decent amount of games. I believe 141 was the final total, 95 of which were with the New York Rangers. But every fight that he got into that I could find on YouTube, they basically all started with Klouček delivering like a really big hit. I mean, this guy was a hard-hitting, nasty defenseman that could really bring some edge to the rink. I saw a couple different, you know, Ranger fans talking about him on Twitter and people that, you know, remembered him playing. And, you know, a lot of people, I saw one comment that was kind of funny. He said he was the original Trouba train. And there was some of that for sure. Again, it's hard to find a whole ton of highlights because we're going back like 24, 25 years, and there's only so much of that stuff available on YouTube. I mean, YouTube didn't even exist until I think like 2004 was the year that it debuted. So, you know, there's only so many highlights there for Tomas Klouček, but, you know, again, the ones that are there, obviously a very hard-hitting and hard-nosed defenseman. But yeah, drafted by the Rangers in 1998 in the 5th round at number 131 overall that year. He then made his NHL debut a couple of years later in 2000, 2001 with the Rangers. Played 43 games that season, another 52 games with the Rangers the season after that. So a total of 95 games with the Rangers. He had 2 goals, 7 assists, and was a -5 during that time. He then went on to play for the Predators, 8 games with the Preds, and then 38 games with the Atlanta Thrashers. So yeah, a total of 141 career NHL games. And, you know, as far as like that era of Ranger hockey, the early 2000s, that was not really a fun time to be a fan of the New York Rangers, if we're being completely honest here. That's through no fault of Klouček. The Rangers just were a team that was kind of directionless at that time and frankly was just not really all that good. But he played with a lot of the big-time superstar Ranger players, some of whom were on the 1994 Stanley Cup championship team, and some other big names beyond that. A couple of his teammates included Brian Leetch, Mark Messier, Adam Graves, Peter Nedved, Theo Fleury, Mike Richter, Eric Lindros, Mike York, and Matthew Barnaby, just to name a few. He was also there for the regular season opener after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. That was obviously a very memorable game. The Rangers open up the season at home against the New Jersey Devils. The game went into overtime, and the Rangers won that overtime game. And Klouček did indeed participate in that game. I was really hoping, because I'm searching YouTube and looking for any career highlights and whatnot, some interesting information about Klouček. I was really hoping that I could find preferably his first career goal with the Rangers, but also potentially his second and what turned out to be his final goal in the NHL, which was also with the Rangers. Unfortunately, I was not able to do that, but through the magic of hockeyreference.com, I was able to look up these goals and at least find the details behind them. So his first goal was a 4-3 overtime win for the Rangers against the Flyers on January 16th, 2001. This was Klouček's 15th career game. He scored late in the first period to cut Philly's lead from 2-0 to 2-1. Mark Messier with the primary assist to Klouček on this play, and Theo Fleury with the secondary assist. And then Fleury went on to also score the overtime game winner in that game. And then Klouček's second goal was in a 2-1 win over Montreal on March 11th, 2002. He scored the first goal of the game off of an assist, once again from Theo Fleury. So Fleury assisted on both of Klouček's goals. And then for what it's worth, the Rangers won that game in dramatic fashion. Sandy McCarthy with the game winner with 46 seconds remaining. So both of Klouček's goals helped the Rangers get a 1-goal win. So that's pretty cool to think about in and of itself. Something else about Klouček, though, I mentioned the physicality, the edge, the nastiness, more than willing to drop the gloves as well. If you type in his name to YouTube, you'll see a couple of tribute videos, and you'll see a couple of news reports talking about obviously his untimely and very unfortunate passing. But most of the videos that are going to pop up are going to be fights. And I watched a couple of them. I watched more than a couple of them, actually. I was just curious to, see him in action there. But the first video, as far as a fight that pops up when you type his name into YouTube, the title of the video is Eric Cairns versus Theo Fleury and Alexei Yashin versus Tomas Klouček. And this was a Rangers-Islanders game. Dan Blackburn was in net and basically had to make a save after the whistle blew, and players do not like that. So the next thing you know, everybody's going after everybody. It basically turns into like a 5-on-5 scrum. A decent amount of players ended up dropping the gloves. And Klouček definitely got the best of Yashin on this play. I don't think Yashin was really known to be a fighter, but Klouček landed some pretty big right hands, ended up wrestling him down to the ice, and just some old school Rangers-Islanders stuff going down there. Then there was another video that I watched, and this was just such a unique situation that started this fight. So Klouček was actually in the penalty box during the play, and then obviously his penalty expires. He comes out of the box. He comes out of the penalty box, and the puck carrier for Montreal just happened to be right there. So Klouček's not just going to let him go by. He absolutely leveled this guy. It was a clean hit. Now, there was a Montreal player that Klouček ended up fighting on this play, Sheldon Sore, who took exception to what happened here. And I can understand that too. It was just such a strange play. It's something that you don't see very often at all. A player steps out of the penalty box and immediately crushes his opponent with a hit. And again, clean hit, and his opponent did have the puck. So it's not like he just took a run at somebody who didn't have the puck. Klouček did lose this fight, but he hung in there against a much more experienced fighter for, as long as he could. But, as far as his fighting history, hockeyfights.com credits Klouček with 6 career NHL regular season fights, including 6 with the Rangers. And you guys are going to love this, especially if you're not too happy with the job that the Rangers have done this season. That'll make sense in just a second. Klouček's final NHL fight, again, going by hockeyfights.com, which usually does a pretty good job keeping track of this stuff. His final NHL fight was when he was a member of the Atlanta Thrashers, and they were playing the Buffalo Sabres, and his opponent in the fight was none other than Chris Drury. Now, sadly, I was not able to find any video of this. Hockeyfights.com didn't have this video, wasn't able to find it on YouTube or anything like that, but I went on hockeyreference.com, looked up the box score for that game, and indeed, it does look like this fight did occur. If anybody remembers that, it was more than 20 years ago, but if you happen to remember it, definitely let me know if you have any details about it, because I think that one might be lost in time. If you can't find it on YouTube, then it's definitely slim pickings at that point. I'm sure it's somewhere in the NHL archives, but I certainly was not able to find it. This is also interesting too, I thought. Klouček was named for the Hartford Wolfpack their Rookie of the Year in 1999-2000. That was before he made his NHL debut. And in the wake of his passing, there was actually a video that was posted on Twitter it's like an old highlight package from Klouček. It's not like super detailed, but it does show a couple of highlights from what Klouček did for the Hartford Wolfpack that season. And he was named, once again, the Hartford Wolfpack Rookie of the Year. And he also won a Calder Cup with the Pack that same season in 1999-2000. So Klouček, it's not the Stanley Cup, but the man won a professional hockey championship. And that's pretty awesome. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment. It's a heck of a lot more than what most hockey players get to do. So very, very cool accomplishment there. And fun fact for everybody, that is the Wolfpack's only Calder Cup championship. And it sounds like Klouček was a big part of that. Again, being their Rookie of the Year that same season. But he was eventually traded by the Rangers to the Predators, along with Marek Zidlicki and Rem Murray, in exchange for Mike Dunham. Dunham was the Ranger goalie for a couple of seasons after that. And as far as his personal life, I wish I could say more about that. Unfortunately, scouring the internet and whatnot, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of information readily available. There was an article that said that he has 2 kids. So obviously my heart goes out to the 2 of them, as much as anybody. And, my heart also goes out to anybody, former teammates, former coaches, his friends, his family, whatever it might be. It's always a sad day whenever we lose a member of the Ranger community, and Klouček is no exception. And wasn't with the Rangers for too long, but it does sound like he was at least somewhat of a crowd favorite during that time. Again, it was a bleak era of Ranger hockey, but at least you could rely on Klouček to go out there and deliver a couple of bone-jarring hits every so often. And again, even looking at YouTube for whatever few highlights of Klouček with the Rangers are out there, again, every video that comes up is a Klouček fight that was started by a punishing but clean hit by Klouček. So, yeah, man, just a sad moment, and may he rest in peace. And again, my heart goes out to anybody that was affected. In just a second, we will shift gears. I want to talk finally in detail about the contract extension that was signed by Jonathan Quick, and we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. There is fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Cost-effective growth. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business very efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode by talking a little bit about Jonathan Quick and this one-year extension that he signed just a couple of days ago. We've talked about it in passing here and there, but I want to go ahead and offer my full thoughts on this situation. Just kind of unique in and of the fact that this is the second straight season where Quick has signed an in-season one-year extension with the Rangers. It sounds like he might be at a point in his career where he's willing to go, year by year, season by season, and the Rangers, for their part, seem willing to do the same thing with Jonathan Quick. Second straight year also that he gets a small raise on his cap hit. His first season with the Rangers, $825K. I want to say the league minimum at that time was like $750K, so he was just a shade above that. But then this season, he got a bump up to $1.275 million, and next season, it's going to be $1.55 million. I'm not too worried about the slight increase in the cap hit. The league minimum next year will be $775K, so he's less than $1 million above that. And, I feel like the little bit of a cap bump the salary bump for Quick is warranted. It's a way for the Rangers to keep him in-house and entice him to stay without going completely overboard with it, because we certainly don't want them to do that. But I think at this point, it's pretty obvious that Jonathan Quick really likes being a Ranger, still has a passion for the game, and is willing to play a backup role. I was wondering, after last season, not so much after this season, because he hasn't been as good this year as last year. I think part of the reason for that is obviously the Ranger defense has had a major decline this year. But after last year, he had that resurgence, played very well. He was even the de facto starter for a 3-game stretch there when Igor was going through his struggles. Like, I started to wonder, does he want to still be a starter? Is there a team that would kind of roll the dice on him, or at least put him in a competition to be the starting goalie? And obviously, Quick is happy being a backup and happy being a member of the New York Rangers. Obviously, he's from the area, so that might have something to do with it as well. But it's funny because when the Rangers first signed Jonathan Quick, a lot of people didn't really get it. I was feeling the move, I think, more than most Ranger fans were. I mean, my logic at the time, it's something that I'll repeat right now, was that if you're just going to have a random, backup goalie, veteran goalie to be in there and take a couple of games whenever Igor needs a breather, you might as well go ahead and bring in a guy that is going to be in the Hall of Fame and has won 3 Stanley Cups, and that's Jonathan Quick. And, even with saying that, though, even though I was feeling the move, I think more than most Ranger fans were, I didn't think for a second, not for a second, that Jonathan Quick was going to end up being a Ranger for 3 years. And it appears that now will be the case. I think this union between Quick and the Rangers has paid off quite well. I mentioned this a second ago, too. Quick's numbers this year, not quite as good as last year. But again, I think that has more to do with the Rangers being a lot leakier defensively than it does with anything else. And you can say the same thing for Igor Shesterkin. Igor has not had his best season, but I think, a big part of that, obviously, is the fact that the Ranger defense has just been shaky at best this season. We'll be a little bit nice, and we'll just say shaky at best. But Quick this year, 21 games, 17 starts, a record of 9-6-2, an .896 save percentage, a .314 goals against average, and 3 shutouts. Those 3 shutouts, and it's possible he gets one more down the stretch here. We'll see. Igor's going to be playing a lot. But those 3 shutouts, that's the most shutouts that Quick has had in a season since 2017-2018. And of his 17 starts, I found this interesting too. Quick has allowed 2 or fewer goals 7 times. 7 times in 17 starts, Quick has allowed 2 or fewer goals. But I think the reason why you see the goals against average so high and the save percentage so low is that when it rains, it pours. He's also had some games where he really hasn't given the Rangers a chance, and you can throw the Ranger defense in there too. They're all one and the same. But Quick has also had 6 games this season where he's allowed 5 or more goals. So it's either been awesome or not good at all when Jonathan Quick has started, far more often than not. But, beyond the on-ice hockey, and I think, again, Jonathan Quick, there's always some risk when you're dealing with somebody in their late 30s. Quick is actually going to turn 40 in season next year. So there's always some risk when you're dealing with somebody like that, especially when it comes to the goaltender position. But I do think, the intangibles need to be factored in here as well. The Rangers have talked often about what a great leader he is. There were some stories from behind the scenes last year about how great he was for this team in the playoffs, and that double overtime game against the Canes in round 2. He was pushing them between periods, keep going, keep fighting. We're going to get this. Let's go. That kind of stuff. That's just great to hear. And I do think, having a veteran leader in there is not the worst thing. And there might be some people that hear that and think like, oh yeah, well, whole lot of good his leadership has done this year, right? And that's not entirely unfair. But when you look at what's happened with the Rangers, you look at that miserable stretch that they went through when they were 4-15, and you look at the fact that they don't have a captain now, and there's times where you're just not really sure who's steering the ship. That's a team that, to me, needs more veteran leadership and not less of it. So for that reason alone, I like the fact that Jonathan Quick is going to be back next season. The other argument that I know some Ranger fans might have, if you're not 100% sold on this re-signing, you might be thinking about Dylan Garand, who obviously is a Ranger homegrown prospect, former 4th-round pick, having a great season for the Hartford Wolfpack. He's been called up, I believe, 3 times in the last 2 seasons combined, but he's yet to step onto the ice during the game. He's backed up, this guy or that guy. There was a game last season where both Igor and Quick were unavailable, so Domingue started and Garand backed him up. But he's at least been up on the NHL roster a couple of times. We'll see if he ends up making his AHL debut down the stretch this year, if the Rangers are out of the playoffs. But for anybody that wants to see Garand, my advice there is to be patient. Garand, we'll get there. Garand's still just 22 years old. This season, having an excellent season with the Hartford Wolfpack, 32 games, a record of 17-8-7, 274 goals against average, 914 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. And as we know, he's been a beast in the Calder playoffs, the last handful of seasons as well, the last 2 seasons to be exact. And one other thing here is that with Garand, you got to keep in mind, Igor Shesterkin is the franchise goalie. He's in place. He's going to be here for a long time going forward. So Garand, he's somebody that if the Rangers get the right offer, if there's a team that's really, really interested in Dylan Garand, then it might make sense at one time or another to trade him. I know some people are going to say, oh, well, make him the backup. You could do that. But I think of backup goalies, and I typically think of like well-traveled veteran goalies. Garand, he's in a little bit of a timeshare with Louis Domingue right now, but this is not somebody that's used to being a backup. I'm not sure how that would go for like a younger goalie. I mean, you could do it. It's certainly possible. But, if he has some trade value and the Rangers can get something significant in return for Garand, then I think that makes sense. And then even once Quick eventually hangs up the skates and or is no longer a New York Ranger, at that point, you could go the veteran backup route. You could basically bring in a Yaroslav Halak type, going forward, go season by season with your backup goalie, do it however you want to do it, and probably look to save money on the backup goalie situation. But look, Garand's been really good. I mean, if you want to make him the backup in the next couple of seasons, I'm not going to fight that. I get the feeling that this next season with Quick will probably end up being his final season with the Rangers, but never say never. We know by now not to bet against a legend. That is for sure. But again, for the time being, I really do like this signing. I think it's good for the locker room. I think Quick has shown an ability to hold up even at his advanced age. He clearly has adjusted to life as a backup goalie after being a Vezina winner and putting together a Hall of Fame resume. I'm not so sure how many goalies would be able to do that as seamlessly as he has. And I think he deserves credit for that. And I'm somebody that I think is very popular among his teammates, among the fan base. So good stuff all around. I like the fact that Jonathan Quick will be back this upcoming season. So figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.